In this final episode, Nu reported to Alpha about the current situation in Oriana. The Black Rose has been activated. Even though the situation is very dangerous, Alpha is not worried at all. That's because Shadow is present in Oriana. Mordred was quite impressed with the recent surprise attack that managed to injure Ragnarok. He then asked for their identity. Immediately, several guests at the church changed their attire to all black. As usual, Shadow introduced them as Shadow Garden. Ragnarok's right arm, which was injured earlier, has now healed. He also summoned some of his demon minions to various parts of the city. At that moment, Shadow instructed Rose to go do what she needed to do. Meanwhile, Shadow would confront Ragnarok directly. Mordred, seeing this, felt that Shadow was overly confident in his abilities and had no sense of limits. Suddenly, Beta and Epsilon appeared before him. They both said that it was actually Mordred who was unaware of his limits. Casually, Epsilon stated that she would kill Mordred. However, before that, they both would make Mordred spill all the information he had. Mordred was slightly provoked by their words and swung his sword. The swing of his sword was completely invisible. It seems that this is why Mordred is called the magical human sword. However, Beta and Epsilon knew that the sword Mordred carried was an ancient artifact belonging to the elf race. They couldn't understand why Mordred was proud of someone else's achievement. Even the armor worn by Mordred was also an artifact. Mordred's patience finally ran out, and he became furious. Mordred began to attack seriously. However, he did not expect that his sword strike could be stopped by a magical energy strike. He thought the power came from an artifact he didn't know about. Unfortunately, his guess was wrong. Beta stated that the power was a blessing of wisdom from their master. Someone like Mordred would never understand it. On the other side, Rose went to the royal palace to eliminate the demons there. However, there were still many demons roaming around the city. Fortunately, there were already several members of Shadow Garden handling it. Rose had no choice but to leave it to them. While at the palace, Margaret approached Rose with a worried face. After watching a video from King Gert, Margaret felt guilty for always seeing him as evil. However, Rose didn't seem to mind at all. She instead asked her to open access to the garden to evacuate everyone in the palace. Margaret felt truly foolish all this time. Now, she is convinced that Rose is the true king of the kingdom of Oriana. Shadow is still fighting Ragnarok as calmly as usual. The magical energy and power of Ragnarok are indeed unbelievable, just as he had hoped for in another world. However, Shadow feels superior when it comes to shadow control. He then binds Ragnarok's body with threads, just as he did when disguised as John Smith. Meanwhile, Rose went to the city to gather soldiers. As much as possible, she wants to save the citizens. Coincidentally, she also met 664 and 665. The citizens will be taken care of by the kingdom's soldiers, the demons will be handled by the numbers, and Shadow will deal with Ragnarok alone. Now, Rose just needs to figure out how to handle Mordred. As she thinks about it, Rose suddenly sees Mordred being thrown around badly. She doesn't know that Beta and Epsilon had already confronted him. In fact, the sword Mordred carried has already fallen into Epsilon's hands. Despite being badly beaten, Mordred hasn't given up because Ragnarok is still around. He believes he can eliminate them all if he can harness the greatest power in the observation room. Beta then uses Mordred's confidence to bait him. If Mordred is truly confident, then there should be no harm in discussing information about the Black Rose, demons, and the church's faction. If Mordred refrains from speaking, it means he's not sure of his victory. Fully provoked by this, Mordred reveals that beyond this world, there are numerous different worlds in separate dimensions. The church refers to these realms as demon worlds. For instance, there's an ice world spreading to the planet's edge, a toxic world uninhabitable by any living beings, or a death world filled with gravestones of a grayish hue. There's also a monster world brimming with immense magical energy. All these other worlds revolve around a specific central point. Their current world also orbits that central point. The church is still unaware of what lies at that center. However, the primary concern is that these other worlds rotate alongside theirs. Every so often, worlds collide in time. As a result, they momentarily connect as one. Mordred then shares an intriguing piece of information. Based on ancient site research, before a certain year, this world lacked magical energy. In other words, magical energy flowed into this world from the demon realms. Consequently, there was a drastic shift in this world's dynamics, which led to the extinction of ancient creatures, precisely 10 million years ago. Only beings capable of adapting to the new environment survived. However, there's also a theory suggesting humans might originate from another world. This phenomenon also works the other way around. Simultaneously, various things from this world are drawn into the demon realms. Beta is curious if the Diabolos demons come from another world. Mordred asserts that Diabolos was indeed born in this world. However, not originally. The source of the Diabolos demons is a creature from another realm. The Church refers to this world as the First World. Additionally, Mordred mentions that the Black Rose is actually a man-made gateway to the demon realm. In the past, the Kingdom of Oriana accidentally opened this gateway, burying 100,000 Vegalta soldiers overnight. However, the kingdom didn't remain unscathed. Monsters emerged from the gateway, slaughtering humans. It was the Church that sealed the gateway, saving the kingdom. Yet, in return for their aid, the Church demanded compensation. They sought the royal family's blood, specifically Rose Oriana's, as her magical energy surpassed that of any other royal. However, King Dirk refused. Consequently, Oriana faces destruction once again because King Dirk defied the Church. Mordred still believed he would win with the power of Ragnarok. Unbeknownst to him, Ragnarok had already been shattered into pieces by Shadow's attack. He couldn't believe his eyes and even questioned his sanity. Eventually, Mordred transformed himself into a demon. However, he was still no match for Shadow. In fact, Shadow hurled him into outer space, intending to unleash his maximum power there. Before doing so, Shadow erected a barrier to ensure his attack wouldn't affect Earth. He then unleashed his ultimate move, I'm Atomic, with full force.
I'm atomic.
The nuclear explosion from this attack was so immense that the entire Earth was bathed in its light. Once done, Shadow returned to Earth. However, the previously active Black Rose had now transformed into some sort of teleportation gate. Curious, Shadow attempted to touch the gate and was sucked into it. At the same moment, the ring worn by Rose shattered. Members of Shadow Garden who witnessed this, including Rose, naturally panicked. They had no idea where their leader had been taken. Suddenly, we are introduced to a familiar face, Nishino Akane. She was Sid's classmate in his old world. It appeared Akane was now in a world reminiscent of Sid's old one, albeit one that seemed to have been ravaged by apocalypse. Akane woke up in the middle of the night. She revealed that every time she looked at the moon, she was reminded of that day and of him. At that moment, it seemed Akane wanted to go outside. However, her friend, also in school uniform, was concerned, knowing that enemies were likely active at night. Still, Akane insisted on not leaving her companion behind. Apparently, many people had gone missing during this time. At the very least, Akane hoped to find any remnants of those people. On her journey, Akane remembered a man she despised. His academic achievements were below average, as were his athletic abilities. Even his appearance was remarkably ordinary. She couldn't recall anything significant about him. Yet, whenever she saw the moon, Akane was reminded of him, about that day and about him. Upon reaching her destination, it seemed Akane was too late. Deep down, she knew that anyone targeted by them wouldn't survive after a few days. As Akane continued walking, she felt like someone was following her. When she turned around and drew her weapon, there was no one in sight. However, her adversaries revealed themselves when Akane thought it was safe. She collided with a muscular man in front of her. Then, someone from behind ran up to shock her with a taser. By the time she regained consciousness, Akane found herself handcuffed. The situation eerily resembled the time when Akane was abducted by two mysterious men. Upon closer inspection, the two assailants bore a striking resemblance to those who had kidnapped her before. However, it seemed the setting in this world was slightly different. Akane was a savior, and these two were hired by their client to capture her. Their client demanded Akane be brought in alive because he wanted to kill her with his own hands. The muscular man, referred to as Deku, seemed somewhat deranged upon seeing Akane. For some reason, seeing her reminded Deku of someone wielding dual sickles. He went into a rage, choking the defenseless Akane. Suddenly, footsteps echoed from above the building. A brief silence ensued, then in an instant, the entire rooftop was destroyed. Emerging from the debris was Sid, still possessing his powers as Shadow,